We are well underway into Phase 4 of the MCU, and this weekend we get Thor: Love and Thunder. The preview screenings have already happened, and they have taken in quite a bit of money, outpacing Thor: Ragnarok, but not doing quite as well as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, so likely to exceed the predecessor, but not go quite to the stratosphere of that film. And here to talk with me about that is a man who's seen the film, to talk about the merits of it. Was it good? Should people watch it? Joe Corallo. That's what we're going to talk about. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thor: Ragnarok is certainly one of the MCU films that stands out as a little bit different than the rest of the MCU. Taika Waititi has a very specific sense of humor, and he certainly brought that into Thor: Ragnarok, and he has come back for Thor: Love and Thunder. It felt like this movie might be a little bit overstuffed with the things that they needed to accomplish. We needed Fat Thor not to be fat anymore and kind of get back to being Thor. We had the introduction of Jane Foster as Thor, I believe, and we also have the quest for King Valkyrie to find her queen, and it felt like they had a lot of stuff to do, and you had the Guardians of the Galaxy in the film. Did you think it was good, Joe? Would you recommend this movie?
I would say it's easily, for me, I did enjoy it more than Doctor Strange 2. I think it might be my favorite of Phase 4, but I don't like Phase 4 that much. One of the big sticking points for me with all the movies in Phase 4, including Thor: Love and Thunder, everything's focused on the movies themselves. There isn't a lot of... We don't get set up for what happens next. I think there are probably people who aren't bothered by that, who actually might prefer this. Let's just see the characters and let them do their thing. And that's great. If you do, you will probably like these movies more, and you probably are enjoying this phase more, and that's fine. But for me, overall, that's probably been my biggest gripe of this phase, and this movie just continues that trend.
To where there's a lack of an overall direction and long-term vision for what the MCU is. And I get where you're coming from. It sounds like Kevin Feige doesn't even know if there's going to be an Avengers film. Is it going to be Secret Wars? What is it leading to? It hasn't really seemed to come out in the vision. And the films that they have done, obviously, we've gotten the Turtles, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, and I believe we get Thor: Love and Thunder are pretty much Phase 4 so far. And then you have the Disney Plus stuff. One of the big selling points of Thor, to me, is Chris Hemsworth. I think he has done a great job with the character. But one of the reasons I think Taika Waititi was probably glad to come into Thor is because despite being a leading man and being very buff and being able to be super heroic, he has fantastic comedic timing. And that was certainly taken advantage of in Ragnarok. Do we get a more powerful, super heroic Chris Hemsworth version of Thor here, or is he pretty much punchlines again?
It's a mix of both. They do go out of their way, especially in the beginning and the end, and there's a little bit in the middle, but to show Thor being very, very powerful, really showing you all the things he can do, showing you how hard he'll fight for things. But there's a lot of humor, a lot of, like, some of it I think works, some of it doesn't. I think people will disagree on what works and what doesn't. For example, in terms of the humor that they're trying to do throughout, there's a whole bit where Mjolnir is back. So now Mjolnir and Thor is like jealous that Mjolnir's over
Mjolnir's
with Jane
cheating
Foster.
on him.
Yeah, but they play it up like that, and so then his axe is jealous. And they do little things, where he's trying to talk to Mjolnir, and then the axe kind of comes slowly into the scene, and he's like, we were just talking, like that kind of stuff. And that happens throughout the movie. There's a scene where he's got to have a talk with his axe about things, and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that kind of humor in it. Some of that worked for me, some of it didn't. I think there's some people who will go all in and be doing fan art and shipping and all that stuff, and there are going to be other people who just can't stand it. That's just going to be how it is.
Last time I saw Thor, it felt like he was a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe not officially, but kind of unofficially. I imagine we got some Guardians content in here. Did they get them kind of on their way, or were they a big part of the overall story?
They quickly get rid of them. Very quickly. They do one mission real quick, and then they leave. And that's it. They set up the stuff with Gore the God Butcher. So they like do a thing, and then they're like, oh, there's this like guy going around who's, you know, threatening the different gods, and then they get a message from Sif, who's, you know, like, Thor, we need you, and he's like, I gotta go, and that's it. And no more Guardians. Like that's
probably a smart thing to do, because there was so much other stuff that they really had to handle. This movie felt like it was probably stuffed to the gills. You mentioned Gore the God Butcher. Christian Bale, probably best known by superhero movie fans as Batman, comes in here to play a pretty intimidating, very cool villain from the Marvel Comics universe into the MCU. Now, they did have to make some changes aesthetically, so you could tell it was Christian Bale and whatnot. Was Gore the God Butcher worth the time? Because some of the Thor villains have been very milquetoast in the past.
This might be the best Thor villain so far. You know, I do wish we spent more time sort of with him, but, you know, with him and Thor and how they interact. But, you know, it is what it is.
Christian Bale is a fine actor, so I kind of figured that would be the case, because we had gotten some very nondescript villains in the past. Unfortunately, although the Thor movies have been good up to this point. Another big thing that's introduced in here is Jane Foster Thor. The fans of Jason Aaron's work on the Thor series will know this portion of the story very well. It looks like Natalie Portman put on a little bit of weight. Looked like she was in the gym. She could lift up a hammer. What'd you think of the Jane Foster Thor portion of the story?
She's in the movie a lot. She is Thor basically the whole movie. It's still Chris Hemsworth is the lead, and she would be like a supporting actress, but she is like his like right hand for a lot of the movie. So you are going to get that through basically the whole thing.
And is it based basically on the Jason Aaron Thor run, or is it just inspired by it?
It's based on the run. If you look in the credits, Jason Aaron also has a creative consultant credit.
Okay, so they heavily borrowed from that. Not surprising.
Yeah.
Was it done well? Were you happy with her inclusion in the story and her portrayal of the Thor character?
For the most part, yeah. There are going to be a few lines in the movie that some people are going to. It's going to drive them insane. You know, you're already seeing it now on like Twitter and social media where they're doing fan art and they're saying, yes, and this confirms this and that. But most people in the audience will probably just like roll their eyes, and it's over in a second, and you move on to the next thing, and it's fine.
All right, so the last major character that we'll talk about is Valkyrie. Big part of the previous Thor installment. Was actually quite entertaining in that version of the story. She's the King Valkyrie now. She's got to find her queen. At least that's what they were kind of selling the early marketing promotion of the story. Sounds like she's probably not as front and center as Chris Hemsworth or Natalie Portman. How was this version of Valkyrie, and did she find her queen?
She was okay. They really didn't do anything about finding a queen or anything. It's not really in the movie. She's just kind of running New Asgard. She ends up having a lot less to do. Like, they want her to do more stuff, but by having Jane Foster Thor there as well, she's really taking a back seat, because it's like you have two people with god level weapons. Why would you need Valkyrie? Like, so they come up with different things to be like, you know, like, oh, I got injured just enough to be fine, but not enough to help you two. So you two go do this other thing, you know, like, it's just stuff like that. That's, you know, throughout the movie. So yeah, she's fine, but she doesn't have a lot to do. And she's just, it feels kind of tacked on.
It almost felt like Tessa Thompson's character, Valkyrie, was supposed to be like a co-lead, at least when they first announced it, some of the information was leaking out. But it doesn't seem like that is what actually happened in the final cut.
Yeah, no, it's really, you know, it's really focused on Thor and Thor.
So Taika Waititi, the director, he has a very specific sense of humor. He has a style of humor in his films. I like a Taika Waititi movie. I don't know that I love a Taika Waititi MCU movie so far. I've only seen the Thor Ragnarok. Sure. He even gets a writing credit, I believe, on this one. Did he break canon? That's one of the things that he likes to kind of brag about, is like, you know, don't get too attached to your canon. Don't get too attached to your characters, because I'll break it for you.
It's interesting, because this isn't like Ragnarok. There are some of the elements of humor. There's some of that stuff. Like, if you like some of the humor in Ragnarok, that does carry over like Ragnarok was a bit messy because you have it split between, you know, the gladiator stuff and Hela, and this movie
Hulk in a Thor story.
Yeah, whereas this movie really focuses on Gore, like that. It's more laser focused on Gore as a threat. He's going to kill all the gods. We have to stop him. I think people who were not happy with Ragnarok because it was like 2 movies crammed into 1 movie will probably appreciate the more streamlined storytelling in this, because it really is, we got to stop Gore, and it never deviates from that. It's like everything they're doing is in their journey to stop Gore the God Butcher.
All right, so I am an enormous fan of Beta Ray Bill. I think a lot of people have been waiting for that character to make an appearance in Thor. In fact, in the comic books, Beta Ray Bill, who has like a horse face and an enchanted hammer and stuff, has been Thor in the past. Actually, it was Thor before Jade Foster. Mm-hmm. Do we see Beta Ray Bill? Is it even hinted at that the character is coming to the MCU?
No, not at all.
Oh, come on, man. You can't tell me that, Joe. I knew they were going to be bringing him in.
No, they do have a stinger for another big sort of Marvel character at the end. But yeah, no Beta Ray Bill. So.
My goodness. They got that Daniel Warren Johnson miniseries just sitting there waiting to be made into a damn movie. That would have been great.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a comic book channel more than it is a comic book movie channel, Joe. If there are people out there and they really like Thor Love and Thunder, they thought it was a really good movie, what comic books should they go out there and read if they're looking for maybe the source material or maybe some continuations of the characters in this particular moment during their journey in comic books?
This is so heavy on the Jason Aaron stuff. You know, you have the God Butcher stuff, and then it kind of, not too long after, like it goes into the Jane Foster stuff. So I think if you check out that run, will really lend itself to this more than but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of changed. But that's going to be the one that gives you the most information on kind of what's going on in the movie. I don't think there's a lot of other stuff from the other runs. Like, there's no Loki in this movie at all. He doesn't show up at all.
What?
So
this is the best part of the movie outside of Hemsworth. He ain't boning it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like there's just things like that where it's like, yeah, it's like, geez, like there's none of this, none of that. Like there's odd choices, but yeah, because there's no Loki, there's no Odin, there's no Warriors 3, there's no Hela, there's no Executioner, like all these. There's no Asgard because it's New Asgard on Earth. Like, they took a lot. Heimdall.
So is it floating above New York like the old New Asgard in the comics?
No, it's
okay.
It's just like its own little. It's right on a coast, and it's it's fine.
Did we get Scourge? He was hilarious.
No Scourge, no.
Ah, come on.
so yeah, all that stuff's off the table. So yeah, so there isn't a lot of stuff because so much of the comics, it's about just this rich cast of characters. There's not much of a run you can tap into that's gonna really relate to the movies here, other than Jason Aaron's run.
All right, so this is the last question I'll get you out on. I personally am a big fan of the very first Thor movie. I thought the second one bored me to death. I thought Thor Ragnarok, while being hilarious, was more of a Taika Waititi movie than an actual Thor movie. And now we get Thor Love and Thunder. Is it the best one so far? Where do you rank it among the 4?
It's definitely not the worst. Definitely Thor the Dark World is the least interesting.
Yes.
That's still the case. That hasn't changed with this. The first Thor movie is probably my favorite. And then I don't know yet. I'll probably have to watch it again if this is better or worse than Ragnarok. It does feel like more of a blend of something like the first Thor movie and Ragnarok, like I was saying, because of it's just sort of a linear plot. We have to stop. There are subplots. There's Jane Foster dealing with, being ill and things like that. That's related to like the comics. So you sort of have that underlining plot while also having to stop Gore the God Butcher. And it's like, if you didn't like all that jumping around and trying to like blend all that together and it kind of being messy, and you prefer a more linear story, you're going to like this more. You're still dealing with the same humor, but it does play different when a movie's not as messy. So people might like this more than Ragnarok, or they might prefer, well, if it's going to be goofy, like might as well just go all out, be a big mess. You don't get that Mark Mothersbaugh score in this either. And I really like the Mark Mothersbaugh score of Ragnarok. Mark Mothersbaugh is one of my favorites in terms of like doing when he scores movies. And obviously, is working Devo and things like that. But yeah, so there's other factors to take in, but yeah, so it's about the best kind of outing you're gonna get for a Phase 4 kind of movie. There's no multiverse stuff at all. So if you're multiversed out, it's going to be a breath of fresh air for you. I know I am, but I know some people really want to lean into it. So if you were like, oh, I went from like No Way Home to Doctor Strange and I want more multiverse stuff, then you will probably be disappointed. So, it is what it is.
If you're new to the Thor character, or maybe you only know Thor from the MCU, he's got a long history within comic books, but recently Marvel Comics decided they wanted to go out there and change the origin of the character, make it really muddied from where it was before. They kind of just destroyed the origins of Thor, tying him into a weird X-Men story, maybe the best X-Men story ever, but it didn't really feel right. If you want some more information on that, definitely check out this video.